Flow of gold in and out, if it's a gold dollar, it doesn't matter. If for some reason our goods are priced too high and we are buying goods overseas, gold will go out. Our gold money will go out, and then there will be less of a gold supply. That is not a concern to me, because then as long as there's free pricing mechanism, the prices will drop down and then our goods will be more attractive and gold will come back in. To me, it's just important that you don't have a static economy and say that gold must be this, increasing at a certain rate. Let the market handle these things. The market is much smarter than we are in trying to determine what the money should be. It certainly would be more important if all the countries went together. I do believe that if we led the way, it would be a significant event. Most countries would follow us. We led them away from gold. We could lead them toward gold. But it is not necessary that everybody does everything precisely at the same time. But I do think there would be a tremendous advantage to us doing it together. I do think that I did not mean to indicate that Governor Partee literally does certain things for the politician, but the point that I would like to emphasize is that the politician, we in the Congress, who overspend, then so frequently the Fed has no choice. You know, last year they had to monetize some debt, but the debt wasn't their fault, so they're absolutely correct. As a matter of fact, all the Federal Reserve governors, including Paul Volcker, when he comes before the Banking Committee, he never fails to tell us, you know, if you guys didn't give us so much debt, our problems would be a lot easier. But it's the accommodation and it's the system that works. So the politician keeps voting and voting and spending, which he couldn't do when there wasn't a Federal Reserve System to create new credit and to buy the Treasury bills. It's only under those conditions that the Fed accommodates. So yes, they can criticize us, and then the Congress gets over here and they say, well, it's the Federal Reserve's fault. They're either not printing fast enough or they're printing too slow and the interest rates are too high. So it's sort of one of these deals where they just look at each other and blame each other, but it's neither, it's both. It's the system of big government, deficit spending, accommodation by the creation of credit that is the problem. And I believe the gold standard can handle that and bring that back into perspective. I think that the solution obviously is to have a gold standard where we would restrain the ability to create credit out of thin air. And I do believe also that there's a better understanding by many of you here, people here who have written and understood and understand this issue much better than I do. It is because of the 20th century understanding by the free market economists, coming from the Austrian school, coming from von Mises. The understanding, I would say, is much, much better than it was in the 19th century. We've never had a real good gold standard. And for this reason, I always work very hard and correct any interviewer I ever have when they come and say, oh, you're the guy that wants to go back to the gold standard. I do not want to go back to the gold standard. I want to go forward to a modern and a better understood gold standard, better than we have a better understanding today about how that system ought to work than ever before in the history of mankind, and I believe that's what we ought to do.
Well, I really don't see any need to go through the points again. It'll just get to be repetitious. There are disagreements, as you can see, between Congressman Paul and myself. I would make this point, that if you look through these disagreements, I think that there's a good deal of agreement. I believe that what I feel that the country and the world and the economic society needs is discipline. And I believe that what the congressman thinks the world needs is discipline. But we have a difference in the way we would get there, and I think we also have a difference in what we believe to be the degree of tolerance of the societies of the world to discipline. It's a strong dose, and I'm afraid that if applied too blindly, too greatly, it'll simply be unaccepted, probably in the first instance, but if it should by some miracle be accepted in the first instance, it'll be rejected in the second. The other comment I want to make is that I I suppose I ought to be, having been in Washington as long as I have, I ought to be pretty cynical, and I guess I am really pretty cynical, about the political process and the role of lobbyists and political action committees and all that kind of stuff in determining what positions are on various issues. But I guess I still perhaps am enough of a dreamer that I think that a politician in the long run reflects his public. And therefore I don't really think that you ought to talk about those politicians over there doing all those bad things that the public doesn't want, because I think in the long run a politician does what the public wants. And what you have gotten, and I'm sure this group would be 99% opposed to the experience of the last decade or two, is what you've gotten over this period is what the public wants. Thank you.
We have certain time constraints, so that we have only exactly 10 minutes for questions, and we must be out by 5:30. There's a reception in this room at 7 o'clock, and the first session tomorrow is at 9 o'clock in the morning. Now we can field a few questions, I think. Yes? Question is whether gold standard would result in dramatically lower interest rates. Governor Partee.
Well, I've heard that comment often, and I haven't been able to understand the analytics of it. I don't see that that would be the case. That is, if one is talking about a system where all money units, or all the money units, say, of the United States, have been turned to gold. I can certainly see it if one were to offer a gold-backed bond, let's say, that it would have a lower rate than a non-gold-backed bond would have, but I don't think that it would be true that there would be a necessity for interest rates to be lower. Now, it may be. I guess I would visualize we would have to somehow do this transition to the gold standard, and I don't think in the first instance it could be a pure gold standard, because there would be such a tremendous collapse in the quantity of money and financial wealth in the country. But I guess I would visualize this period of transition, or if you wish, and Congressman Paul would have it, an abrupt change, as one in which prices would collapse sharply for goods and services in the United States. You know, we would have very, very rapid changes in conditions. In that environment, why, of course, without inflation, and there certainly wouldn't be an inflation, it would be deflation in the short run, the nominal rate, I would think, would be lower for the gold debt than it would for the non-gold debt. But it's really such an extreme case, and the problem of the transition is so extreme that I can't truly evaluate what the interest rate profile would be.
Yeah.
I'd like to ask Governor Partee a question. I have, real quickly, I have 4 specimens of currency in my pocket. The first specimen I have is a gold certificate, which you mentioned. It says on there, they're actually deposited in the Treasury of the United States of America, $20 a gold coin payable to the bearer on demand, on the face. It meant that you could take this in and turn it into gold anytime you wanted to. This was an old Treasury bill. They no longer is any good, of course, if I going to take it in, I can't get my gold. The next specimen I have is the first Federal Reserve note that was ever printed in 1913.